my first life, someone got stabbed that night. This time, I moved first.
I died at 38. No legacy, no family, no house. Just 20 years of debugging other people's code in a Beijing office I'd never own a square meter of. A car hit me on a Tuesday. Ordinary death for an ordinary man. Then I woke up in an ambulance, 18 years old, bleeding, and the college entrance exam that destroyed my entire life, the one I botched because this exact car accident left me too shaken to hold a pencil, was starting in 10 minutes. I sat up so fast the paramedic stumbled backward. Young hands, no calluses from 15 years of typing, thin wrists, scratches everywhere, fresh, bleeding, the kind you get from being dragged out of a hedge. My school uniform was torn at the shoulder, blood at the corner of my mouth. July 8th, 2001. The intersection near Yaowen Central Hospital, the same commercial vehicle, the same light it ran. I knew every detail because I'd replayed this day 10,000 times. The first time around, I stayed in the ambulance. I let the nurses fuss. I let myself be scared. By the time I reached the exam hall, I was shaking so badly I could barely fill in the bubble sheet. I scored 105 in English, 530 total, 20 points below first tier cutoff, 20 points. That's all it took. 20 points meant a second-tier university. A second-tier university meant a ceiling. Senior engineer, 200,000 yuan a year, no path to management, no matter how good the code was. It meant 14 years in Beijing without owning an apartment. It meant watching colleagues from Tsinghua and Beta get promoted past me while I wrote better programs than any of them. 20 points, one exam, one afternoon. I was not staying in this ambulance. The doors opened at the emergency bay. Nurses were shouting for a stretcher. The sun hit me like a wall. July in Yaowen, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt shimmer and twist. I jumped out before anyone could stop me. The female driver was standing near the entrance, pale, clutching her phone. I pointed at her. I have to take an exam. This isn't your fault today. Go handle your business. Then I ran. My document bag was still in my hand. Admission ticket, ID card, 2 B pencils, eraser. I glanced at my wrist, 250. 10 minutes until the exam. The school was less than a kilometer away. Less than a kilometer, 10 minutes. Bleeding, dusty, and running like the world was ending. Because it was. My world had already ended once, and it started right here. The difference was that last time, I didn't run. I reached Yaowen No. 1 middle school, with sweat pouring down my face and blood drying on my arms. I looked like I'd crawled out of a ditch. I had, technically. The exam building, second floor. I took the stairs 3 at a time, and that's when I hit the wall. Not a real wall. Worse, a male invigilator, late 20s, triangular eyes, the kind of petty authority that small-town teachers wield like a loaded weapon. He planted himself in the doorway and his lip curled. He wanted to know what I was here for. To take the exam, I said. 30 candidates behind him went silent. The female invigilator almost dropped the test paper bag. He told me I couldn't enter like this. Go home, change clothes, come back. He checked his watch and added that candidates were allowed 15 minutes grace. I asked about the English listening comprehension. He shrugged. Nothing he could do. There it was. The casual indifference of a man who held someone's entire future in his hands and didn't even know it. In my first life, I would have begged. That's what 18-year-olds did in 2001. They submitted to teachers, no matter how unreasonable. But I wasn't 18. I was 38, and I'd spent 2 decades learning that the people who hold the door closed don't respond to politeness. They respond to consequences. I lifted my bangs off my forehead. I let him see the blood, and I smiled. I was hit by a car on the way here, I said. Right now, I'm dizzy, disoriented, and weak. If you don't let me sit down, I'll lie down right here. And once I'm on the ground, your 3 years' salary won't cover the compensation. The Education Commission will issue a public criticism. Your school might fire you. Silence. 30 pairs of eyes on him. The bluff only works if you deliver it with the confidence of someone who isn't bluffing. An 18-year-old couldn't have pulled that off. A 38-year-old who'd survived a decade of corporate politics, different conversation. He let me in. A skinny kid behind my seat. Looked like a monkey, all elbows and energy. Gave me a thumbs up and said it was his first time seeing someone shut a teacher up like that. The invigilator tried to threaten him with a cheating accusation. The kid pointed out that the test papers hadn't been distributed yet. I liked him. I didn't know his name, but I liked him. The papers came out. The room went quiet. I placed my admission ticket on the desk, touched the old mottled wood, narrow bench, aching back, a sensation I hadn't felt in over a decade. Then, I opened the English paper, and I almost laughed. Here's what nobody warns you about rebirth. When you die at 38, having spent 20 years reading English programming documentation and watching American television without subtitles, a high school English exam stops being an exam. It becomes a formality. I recognized every word on the page, every single one. The vocabulary beyond the syllabus, the grammar traps. I read through them the way an adult reads a children's book. The listening comprehension played through the speaker, 30 points. Perfect. The multiple choice section, 125 points. I moved through it steadily. My pen barely paused. The male invigilator stood behind me the whole time, waiting for me to cheat. I never looked up, not once. The essay was about the Chinese national football team qualifying for the World Cup. Almost unfair. I knew exactly what would happen 3 months from now. I wrote about the formation under Milutinovic, analyzed the opponents, discussed the impact on Chinese sports. I wrote with the perspective of someone who'd already watched the story play out. The 2-hour exam took me 80 minutes. I checked my answers twice, walked to the front, and handed in my paper. The invigilator's mouth hung open. The skinny kid grinned. In the restroom, I washed the blood off my face. The water ran brown, then pink, then clear. I looked in the mirror, 18 years old, tall, sharp jaw under the grime, 20 years younger than the face I remembered, 120 points. At minimum, probably higher. This time, I wasn't rattled. I wasn't scared. I was furious. The good kind, the kind that builds. The sun was setting when I walked outside. I reached for my bicycle and realized it was still at the accident scene. No bike. A sweat-soaked 10-yuan bill in my pocket. I stood by the road, about to wave down a taxi, when a voice called my name. A girl in her early 20s, flushed and breathless, rushing toward me. The female driver, the one who'd hit me. Her name was Zhai Yue, 20 years old, a college student interning as a TV host at the provincial station. She'd been driving her father's car, and she looked like she'd been pacing outside the school gates for 2 hours, slowly losing her mind. The whole story spilled out before I could speak. She'd gone back to the accident scene, found my bicycle's license plate, traced it to the school, called my parents at Yaowen Iron Mine, left them her number. She had a plan to take me to the hospital, and she was not taking no for an answer. "Big sister, it's just a few scratches," I said. "I'm fine. Whether you're fine isn't up to you," she said. "Listen to the doctor." I looked at her, really looked at her, earnest, worried. The kind of person who hits a stranger with her car and then spends 2 hours tracking him down because she actually cared. Not liability, not obligation, she cared. In my first life, Zhai Yue would secretly pay for my entire 4 years of university tuition. She never told me. I only found out at her funeral in 2019, when her family showed me the receipts. By then, it was too late to thank her, too late to save her. But that was the old timeline, and I was done with the old timeline. "Okay," I said. "I'll go to the hospital with you." The taxi smelled like cigarettes and fake pine. Zhai Yue sat beside me, hands folded in her lap, apologizing for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. I told her I was fine. She told me that wasn't for me to decide. Fair enough. At the hospital, she made a phone call, and within minutes, a doctor appeared. He ran me through every scan on the menu. Zhai Yue waited outside every door. She didn't check her phone. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching the nurses like a hawk counting her chicks. The scratches were shallow, 5 days of healing, no scars. The brain CT was still processing, but the doctor said no signs of concussion. I could have told her that myself, but Zhai Yue needed to hear it from someone wearing a white coat. Some guilt only loosens when authority signs off on it. Then the isolation room door opened, and there they were, my parents, 40 and 39, standing side by side in their work clothes, Iron Mine uniforms, faded blue, the kind that never quite lost the smell of dust and diesel. Mother's eyes were red. Father was doing the thing he always did when he was scared, standing very straight, jaw tight, one hand in his pocket. They looked young. That was what hit me, not the worry on their faces or the way Mother's voice cracked when she asked if I was okay. It was how young they looked. In my first life, I saw these two people aged 20 years in 4. The mine laid them off. The money ran out. Father's back gave out from construction work. Mother's hair went gray before she turned 50. By the time I could afford to send them anything from Beijing, the damage was already permanent. But right now, standing in that hospital corridor, they were young and healthy and terrified for their son, and I couldn't speak. I walked forward and wrapped my arms around both of them, pulled them close, didn't say a word. Mother patted my back, whispering, "How do you feel? Does anything hurt? Tell me the truth." Father stood rigid for a moment. Then his hand came up and gripped my shoulder, hard, the way men hold on when they're trying not to break. "Dad, Mom," my voice cracked. "It's just a few scratches. I'm fine." That was a lie. I was a 38-year-old man hugging his parents' younger selves, carrying 20 years of guilt they couldn't see. But they didn't need that weight. They just needed to know their son was alive. Jia Yue stood behind them, face tight with guilt, and told them she'd take care of everything. My parents were reasonable people. As long as their son was fine, nothing else mattered. Then, I did something my first life self would never have done. I smiled and said, "It's almost dinner time. Since there's no real damage, why don't we all have a meal together? Not to take advantage of Sister Yue, but a man's got to eat." Mother laughed. The worry drained out of her face like water off a cliff. Father gave me a look I couldn't quite read, half amusement, half suspicion. He was beginning to notice that his quiet son had developed teeth overnight. Jia Yue booked the largest private room at the city hotel, the best hotel in Yaoan. 4 people at a table, built for 12. Mother had gone home to grab me clean clothes while the CT was processing, so I was finally presentable. White cotton t-shirt, no blood, almost civilized. The dinner was warm. Father talked about the mine. Mother fussed over my scratches. Jia Yue relaxed by degrees, the guilt replaced by something lighter. And then I did the other thing my first life self would never have done. I looked at Jia Yue and said, casually, "After you hit me today, my mind felt sharper. Before, I scored 90 or 100 on English. But today, I think I could hit 120. Father slapped the table. "If you score 120 in English, I'll buy you a laptop." In 2001, a laptop cost more than his annual salary. I knew we probably didn't have that kind of money saved, but it didn't matter because I wasn't going to let him buy it. "Dad, you don't need to buy it. I'll earn the money myself." 3 sets of eyes went wide. Jia Yue tilted her head. "Student Zhou Hao, how exactly do you plan to earn enough for a laptop in 2 months? I just bought one at the beginning of the year, nearly 20,000 yuan. I grinned. "You don't need to worry about that. I have plenty of ways." That was half a lie. I had 20 years of internet industry knowledge. What I didn't have yet was a specific plan. It came to me at the table. Jia Yue was trying to let me off the hook, saying computers were mostly used for surfing the internet or playing games. And that last word hit me like a dropped brick. Games. 2001 was the first year of online gaming in China. Stone Age had launched 6 months ago with 40% market share. Hot Blood Legend was about to go into open beta. And I remembered, with the precision of a man who'd spent his career in tech, that a small studio called Dao Feng had built a multi-million yuan empire selling cheat software for Stone Age. Simple plugins, basic functions, amateur code. I had 20 years of programming experience. And in 2001, game plugins existed in a legal gray area, wide enough to drive a truck through. I grabbed Jia Yue's hand without thinking. She turned red. Father coughed. I didn't notice either reaction. My brain was already 3 steps ahead. Target game, feature list, monetization, timeline. I let go and changed the subject. After dinner, I exchanged phone numbers with Jia Yue and sent her home in a taxi. In the cab ride back, Mother held my hand. Father said, "It's truly a blessing in disguise." I nodded, eyes wet, and thought, "You have no idea." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from the scratches, from something heavier, something I hadn't said at dinner and would never say out loud. Jia Yue's future. I knew it the way you know a wound, not from reading about it, but from standing at the edge of it. In 2019, I received a call from my parents. "Come home immediately." The whole family attended a funeral. The deceased was Jia Yue, provincial TV host, not the biggest name, but well known enough. Her parents had been framed. Illegal fundraising, the charges said. They went to prison. Then her husband's investments collapsed. He lost everything and vanished, just gone. No note, no forwarding address, no explanation. And then the media came. First, one unscrupulous local outlet twisted the story. Then, a dozen others piled on. The pressure mounted. Jia Yue drowned her sorrows in alcohol one night and fell to her death. At that funeral, her family showed me the receipts. 4 years of university tuition, every semester, paid in full, sent anonymously. It was her. The woman who'd hit me with her car when I was 18 had secretly funded my entire education and never told me. She'd done it to make amends, and she'd kept it quiet to protect my pride. I found out 18 years too late. Standing at her casket, holding those receipts, I understood the shape of a debt I could never repay. But that was the first life. In this one, I had time, I had knowledge, and I was sitting at a dinner table with a 20-year-old girl who didn't know her parents would be imprisoned, her husband would disappear, or that the media would destroy her. She was laughing at my father's jokes and blushing when I teased her, and she had no idea that the switch on her life's track was already pointing toward the cliff. I would move that switch, quietly, slowly, before she ever knew it needed moving. That was the vow, not dramatic, not spoken, just a fact, lodged in my chest like a second heartbeat. The next morning, I woke up to the phone ringing, then ringing again, then again. Every classmate in Yawan had decided that the day after the college entrance exam was the perfect time to compare answers, make plans, and generally make it impossible to sleep past 7. The last call was Yu Yanhui, my best friend, my brother since kindergarten, Yawan Iron Mine family quarters, same compound, same schools, 16 years of shared history. He wanted to go to McDonald's for lunch and then hit the internet cafe for an all-nighter. In my first life, Yu Yanhui scored 10 plus points below the undergraduate line. He wanted to go to vocational college. His parents said no, undergraduate or retake the year. No negotiation, no exceptions. They controlled everything, what he wore, what he ate, which university he applied to. His mother wouldn't even let him buy his own clothes. He retook the year, lasted half a semester. Then, one night, he had a massive fight with his parents and disappeared. Gone. No forwarding address, no QQ messages, no emails. Every Chinese New Year, my phone would ring. 6 words. Brother, Happy New Year. Then the line went dead. Every time I called back, it was a public phone. Different city each year. I never found out where he was, what he was doing, whether he was married, whether he was happy. For over a decade, 6 words a year was all I had of my best friend. 6 words and a dial tone. Standing in my parents' living room in 2001, holding the phone, hearing his voice, young, cocky, invincible. I had to close my eyes for a second, just 1 second. Then I told him noon at McDonald's and hung up. First things first, standing in the bathroom, I looked at my 18-year-old face, the messy 4-6 part, the fuzzy adolescent mustache, the look of a boy who hadn't learned that appearances were currency. I picked up my father's razor and shaved the mustache clean. Then I walked to the barbershop at the compound gate. The barber had a shamate hairstyle, the spiky, dyed nightmare that passed for fashion in 5th-tier cities. He wanted to give me one too. I told him I wanted a messy cut. He said he'd never done one. Under my instructions, the sides went short. The top stayed slightly longer, thinned out, sprayed with gel, and rubbed through by hand. When I walked out, the barber stared at his own reflection, then at mine, and didn't charge me for the haircut. I was standing outside the barbershop when Jai Yue appeared at the compound gate, riding a brand new blue and white Merida mountain bike. She was wearing a beige t-shirt, white cropped pants, red and white canvas shoes. Simple, clean. The kind of girl who makes an old neighborhood look like it belongs in a movie. She didn't recognize me. Our eyes met, and she flushed. Not from recognition, but from something involuntary. Then I grinned and said, "Sister Yue, did you forget me after just one day?" Her jaw dropped. Are you Zhou Hao? Otherwise, she stared at me like I'd performed a magic trick. Then she pointed at the mountain bike. "This is to compensate you for the bicycle I destroyed. 2,000 yuan at least." I told her I didn't need it. She insisted. I told her a bike this nice would get stolen the second I parked it at an internet cafe. She got exasperated, called me a stinky little brother, and threatened to leave and never talk to me again. I took the bike, no backseat. I patted the front bar. "Sit here, I'll give you a ride." Her face went scarlet. She said she'd walk. I knew she would. The offer was the point, not the answer. We walked side by side through the compound, the bike between us, sunlight filtering through the grape trellises. Every ant in the neighborhood watched us pass. By the time we reached my house, the gossip network had already activated. Yu Yanhui showed up at my door an hour later. Dark skin, acne-covered face, the energy of a small explosive device. He saw my haircut and cursed. He saw Jai Yue and went mute. At McDonald's, he insisted on paying 3 burger sets. Then, the 3 of us walked to Yiwang Qingshen, the internet cafe we'd been coming to since we figured out how to sneak away from our parents. Brother Zhu at the counter gave us a 3-person private room on the 2nd floor. 3 yuan an hour, air conditioning, privacy. Yu Yanhui wanted to play Counter-Strike. I had other plans. I searched for Dao Feng cheat software. The results confirmed everything I remembered. Already operational, selling Stone Age plugins, positive reviews across every BBS. I downloaded their trial version, registered a Stone Age account, and spent an hour dissecting their code. Weak, functional, but limited. The work of programmers who couldn't see past their own era. I could build something categorically better, features they hadn't imagined, because they didn't know what players would want 3 months from now. I did. Stone Age first, established player base, proven demand. Then, by October, pivot to Hot Blood Legend before it started charging fees. The first Legend plugin in my memory had one function, removing fog of war so players didn't need to buy candles. Even that trivial feature hit 90% penetration. I could do 10 times more. I rented a 2-person private room for 3 days. 200 wen, nearly a third of my savings. Then, I told him the truth. Not the rebirth, not the future knowledge, just the part he needed to hear. I taught myself programming, I said. I'm building a game plugin. If it works, we can both earn our university tuition this summer. His eyes went wide. He didn't understand plugins. He'd never played an online game, so I translated it into the only language he knew. Imagine playing Red Alert online. A plugin gives you full map visibility before you've scouted. The opponent builds a black screen device. You see right through it. Your troops move faster. Your mines produce diamond-grade ore from regular veins. That's what a plugin does. Except this isn't a LAN game. It's played by hundreds of thousands of people, and they'll pay money for the advantage. He stared at me. And you can build that? 3 days. Damn. He was quiet for a moment, which was unusual for Yu Yanhui. Then, what do you need me to do? Learn the game, not how to play it, how to promote in it. Find every Stone Age forum, every BBS, every chat room. Register accounts. Write down the URLs. When the plugin is ready, you flood every channel with the announcement. So, I'm the advertising department. You're the entire marketing team. He grinned. The first real grin I'd seen from him. Not the clowning, not the deflection. Just honest excitement from a kid who'd never been trusted with something that mattered. I named the plugin World Destroyer Stone. Domineering. Ridiculous. Perfect for the early internet, where subtlety was a liability, and the loudest name won the click. Yu Yanhui dove in. Within hours, he'd learned how to shout in-game, registered accounts across multiple zones, and started filling a small notebook with forum URLs and chat room addresses. When he tried to register BBS accounts, I stopped him, made him route through an overseas proxy first. Plugins lived in a gray area, but gray areas still had edges. Better to be careful. We worked through the night. By morning, I'd completed 30% of the code. The architecture was clean, the feature set was mapped, and the hardest technical problems were already solved. 20 more hours and it would be done. Walking home before dawn, I looked at Yu Yanhui's profile in the streetlight. Dark skin, bad acne, that ridiculous grin. This was the kid who would disappear for over a decade, who would reduce our friendship to 6 words a year and a dead phone line, whose parents would squeeze so hard he'd shatter rather than bend. Not this time. If he earned his own tuition, real money, from real work, maybe his parents couldn't force the retake. Maybe the fight never happened. Maybe the phone calls never became the only thread between us. I clapped him on the shoulder. Trust your brother. I'll take you to the next level. He laughed. He didn't know I was making a promise across 20 years. 2 more days at the internet cafe. 2 more all-nighters. By the evening before score estimation day, World Destroyer Stone was at 50%. Architecture clean. Hardest problem solved. 20 hours from a finished product. I slept like the dead. My parents woke me before 7. We ate breakfast, and they left for the mine. I took the bus to Yawan No. 1 Middle School. The Merida stayed home. Too flashy, too stealable. I got attention anyway. Score estimation started at 9. The moment I walked into class 1 of senior 3, the room went sideways. Whistles, gasps, boys cursing under their breath. 3 girls in the front row stood up. The kid behind my old seat told his neighbor, loudly, that I must be in the wrong classroom. I ignored all of it. My eyes were already searching for one person, Zhao Yueying, the white moonlight of Yawan No. 1 Middle School. Throughout senior high, boys from our class, our grade, other schools pursued her. Love letters piled on her desk every morning. She never read them. If her father hadn't been a leader at the Bureau of Commerce, she'd have been harassed into transferring. In my first life, I wrote her love letters too. Never sent one. I'd write them at night, shove them in my school bag, and weeks later, tear them into pieces in a quiet corner. Watching the scraps scatter in the wind, I felt something I couldn't name. Not heartbreak. I never got close enough for that. Just the dull ache of existing 3 rows behind someone who would never turn around. I found her in the middle of the room. Simple high ponytail, light-colored floral dress. She was glowing, not from makeup, not from effort, from something internal that made everyone else in the room look slightly blurred. Here's what was different. In my first life, I would have glanced for 1 second, felt my face burn, and dropped my eyes. That was the protocol. Every boy followed it. You could look at Zhao Yueying, but you couldn't hold. I held. She sensed it, looked up, turned toward me. a flicker of surprise, the same reaction the rest of the class had to my new appearance. Then a faint smile, almost reflexive. I didn't look away. Her smile faltered, not from fear, from confusion. Every boy who'd ever looked at Zhao Yueying radiated trembling reverence. My eyes held none of that. What she saw was confidence, appreciation, and a hint of something she probably couldn't name, but definitely felt. For the first time in 3 years of high school, Zhao Yueying lowered her eyes first. I smiled, faintly. This girl still made my heart beat faster. That much hadn't changed, but everything else had. My deskmate Ding Jinghao elbowed me before I sat down. Wanted to know about the haircut, the gel. Could he get one too? I told him that with his long face, this style would make him look like a thoroughbred horse. He stroked his chin, sighed, conceded the point. Then he asked about scores. His were solid. Provincial construction engineering, he suggested. We could go together. My eyes drifted 3 rows ahead, diagonal, the same angle I'd memorized across 3 years. Ding Jinghao caught me, lowered his voice. Don't waste your time. Zhao Yueying swore. Since sophomore year, she'd go to Beijing University of Technology. Her score would get her in. Mine wouldn't. I slammed my palm on the desk. The crack echoed. 30 heads turned, including hers. Why should I settle? Then, louder than intended. If I scored 130 in English, I could get into Beijing University of Technology. 1 second. 2. The entire class burst out laughing. Every single person. They all knew Zhou Hao's English, famously the worst in the class. 3 years of teachers losing sleep over my scores. This year's exam was brutally hard. If I broke 90, it would be a miracle. 130? Hysterical. I sat there, 38 inside, and felt my ears burn. Some embarrassments don't respect age. What I didn't notice until later, one person hadn't laughed. Zhao Yueying had turned when I slammed the table. She'd watched me make the claim. She'd seen the eruption, and she sat perfectly still, eyes on me, expression unreadable, not even a smile. Something had shifted behind her gaze, the same something that made her look away earlier. If everything else about Zhou Hao had changed, maybe this had too. She was giving me the benefit of a doubt that no one else in the room could afford. The smallest gesture, no one noticed, but it was the first crack in the glass. The morning dissolved into score estimation. Chinese, math, and science, I already knew. 495 combined. I'd remembered that number across lifetimes, so I tuned out every teacher until 11, when the English teacher walked in. I hadn't forgotten a single answer. I checked them against the standard answers, one by one. Listening comprehension, perfect, 30 out of 30. Multiple choice, all correct. Close, reading comprehension, correction, nearly flawless, one hazy reading question. Without the essay, already over 120. With the essay, the one where I'd written about the World Cup, with the perspective of someone who already knew the results. At least 10 points out of 25. Conservative. 495 plus 130. 625. And I had one critical piece of data from my past life. This year's English exam was so brutal that cutoff lines plummeted. Beijing University of Technology's admission for Hebei province dropped to 610, 15 points below my estimate. Candidates played it safe with applications, so anyone above the line was virtually guaranteed in. I could get there. The school she'd sworn to attend. The city that held half of China's internet industry. In my first life, Zhao Yueying went to Beijing University of Technology, studied finance, then got into Harvard Business School, MBA, the program that minted global executives. She returned to China in 2012 as a senior director at a multinational, $800,000 a year, a different galaxy from mine. In 2013, she married a Chinese-American fashion designer. Lavish wedding in the States. The groom was well known in high society. He was also, according to every classmate at our 2016 reunion, openly gay. Zhao Yueying knew before the wedding, married him anyway, to satisfy her family, to close a chapter. She flew back to China. He stayed in America, different continents. They called it a marriage. She treated relationships as disposable, convenient, something she could pick up or put down without cost. I didn't know whether to pity her or admire her, but sitting in that classroom with 625 burning in my notebook, I thought, this time, our lines aren't running parallel. Now, I'll be honest about something, because the question is obvious. I was 38 in my head. She was 18. The girl 3 rows ahead of me was a teenager. The man whose heart rate ticked up when their eyes met had been paying taxes for 2 decades. Strange? Yes, but here's what I'd learned. The Zhao Yueying I carried in my memory wasn't the teenager. It was the Harvard graduate, the executive, the woman who'd built a career that dwarfed mine. What I felt wasn't an old man chasing a girl. It was a man who'd spent 20 years regretting his cowardice, standing at the starting line for the second time. Whether I deserved that chance, well, I'm sure you have opinions. The plugin went live on July 11th at midnight. By noon the next day, Yu Yanhui and I were back at Yiwang Qingshan, hunched over our screens, refreshing forum pages like two addicts watching a slot machine. The first post had 80,000 views, nearly 60,000 downloads, almost 10,000 replies. In 12 hours, total downloads across every Stone Age forum had hit 110,000. Yu Yanhui couldn't sit still, hopping between tabs, tallying numbers in his notebook, mouth hanging open. He asked how much we could charge once we started selling. I told him the math: 10 yuan per user, maybe 30,000 paying customers, 300,000 a month in theory. In practice, after channel costs, distribution commissions, agent cuts, we'd be lucky to pocket 100,000. His face fell, then brightened. 100,000 is not bad. My parents can't earn 20,000 in a year. I shook my head. Brother, the real problem isn't the money, it's time. You need tuition in 2 months. If you don't have it, your parents force you to retake senior year. He slapped his forehead. The retake threat was the sword over his head, and he'd forgotten about it while counting downloads. Classic Yu Yanhui. But the plan was never to sell World Destroyer Stone ourselves. 2 kids in a 5th-tier city, 500 wen in capital, no online payments, no Taobao, no Alipay. Building a national sales network was fantasy. The plan was simpler, crueler. Give the product away for free. Let the download counter do the killing. I'd borrowed the strategy from 360 Antivirus, a company that wouldn't exist for years, one that would annihilate the paid antivirus industry by giving away a better product for nothing. In 2001, nobody understood this model. They wouldn't for another decade. The Blade Cheat team understood the damage, though. They just couldn't understand why anyone would do it. 800 kilometers away, in a 3-bedroom apartment in Zhongguancun, Beijing, 7 or 8 young men were sweating through their shirts. I didn't witness this part personally, but later, when they sat across from me, they told me everything. So, I'll tell you now. The Blade team had cleared over 300,000 in profit in June. They were planning to hit 400,000 in July, expanding their network, bypassing provincial agents. Life was good. Then, their engineer downloaded World Destroyer Stone. One look at the interface, one test run. The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet before someone gets fired. Their lead engineer later compared it to the production team behind Calabash Brothers, watching the special effects of Kung Fu Panda. The gap was visible at a glance. Xie Kun, the actual brains of the operation, spent the morning drowning in phone calls from provincial distributors. Every call delivered the same message: users want refunds. July payments frozen. If World Destroyer keeps running free, they're dropping Blade permanently. His phone bill alone was devastating. 2001 was the era of two-way billing. Every minute cost money incoming and outgoing. Then there was Du Feng, the other founder, a street thug who taught himself just enough programming to be dangerous. The kind of man whose first instinct when losing money was violence. He slammed his fist on the table. He said cutting off someone's income was the same as killing their parents. He said you could buy a man's life for 10,000 yuan on the black market. He said they should dig the developer out, force him to hand over the code, and if he refused, chop off both his hands. See how he writes code after that. Xie Kun told him to calm down. Du Feng didn't calm down. He called a contact at one of the forums, offered 1,000 wen for the registration and login IPs. 10 minutes later, 5 addresses arrived on QQ, 3 from the United States, 2 from the Cayman Islands. Every login had been routed through an overseas proxy. From the moment Yu Yanhui registered, I'd made him use proxies. 20 years of tech industry experience had taught me one thing: no amount of coding skill could replace. Cover your tracks before you need to. Du Feng stared at the screen. The bluster drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. Xie Kun tried adding my QQ dozens of times. I saw every request. The username was Qianxing Belong. Verification message, head of Blade Cheat. I rejected them all. Yu Yanhui's jaw dropped. Wasn't this who we were waiting for? I told him the bullet needed to fly a little longer. They were panicking, but they hadn't broken yet. In a few more days, when their entire distribution network collapsed, they'd come back with a much bigger number. By the time we left the cafe that evening, downloads had passed 180,000. 2 days later, 300,000. By week's end, 500,000. I never confronted the Blade team, never called them back, never sent a single message. I just let the counter climb. The most devastating weapon in business isn't a fist or a threat. It's a free product better than anything your enemy can build. And somewhere in Zhongguankun, Du Feng, the man who'd promised to chop off my hands, was watching his empire dissolve one download at a time, unable to find, fight, or even identify the person killing him. I won't pretend I didn't enjoy that, but I couldn't watch numbers forever. On the morning of July 13th, Jia Yue called. She needed to drive to the provincial capital for business and was terrified of the national highway alone. She begged me to ride along. My gut said no, but the thought of Jia Yue crawling at 30 kilometers an hour alongside overloaded coal trucks on a crumbling road overrode everything. I burned my data onto 3 CDs at the internet cafe. No USB drives in 2001, just a borrowed HP burner and blank discs, and climbed into the passenger seat of her father's black Audi A6. She drove the way she lived, earnest, cautious, and slightly terrified. After half an hour of watching coal trucks lumber past us, I told her to pull over. I'd drive. She refused. No license. 18 years old. I rattled off the Audi's specs: 2.8-liter engine, CVT transmission, all-wheel drive, and walked her through the ignition sequence. You actually know how to drive? In my first life, I'd driven a Santana for 5 years. I didn't tell her that. I adjusted the seat, the mirrors, fastened the seatbelt, signaled left. Textbook. Her mouth fell open. I drove the rest of the way at 70, sometimes 80. Clean overtakes, decisive lanes. We swapped back at the city limits. No license meant no city driving, and she never questioned me again. She took me to an arts district deep in the city center, a failed commercial street colonized by painters and musicians. At the very back, behind a graffiti sign reading "Violent Sky," was a rehearsal studio. I walked in and stopped breathing. A 4-piece rock band. That was normal. What wasn't normal was the equipment. The lead guitarist held a sunset-colored Gibson worth 70 to 80,000 yuan. The drummer sat behind a top-of-the-line Emperor Star Kit, the set alone over 100,000, plus cymbals pushing it past 200,000. The entire room was worth more than $1 million. They were all rich, obscenely, casually rich. The guitarist was Pei Fei Hong, Jia Yue's cousin. He'd heard I wrote songs. She'd told him about Nanshan Nan and wanted to record it in his studio. That was the real reason she'd brought me. They rehearsed first. 3 covers: Dada Band's Angel, Beyond's Boundless Oceans, Vast Skies, Black Panther's Santa Lucia. 3 songs, 3 different styles. Pei Fei Hong's voice strained on all of them. When he asked for feedback, I gave it straight. Punk rock, pop rock, hard rock, too mixed. You're imitating without innovating. Your voice isn't suited to any of these styles, but you're forcing it. You've spent a fortune on this band. Tell me you've at least found a direction. The drummer, An Mingxuan, father the biggest real estate developer in the province, told me to prove I could do better instead of talking. I looked at his kit: 16-inch crash, 17-inch crash, 18-inch crash, plus water cymbals and a bell. 5 cymbals he hadn't touched once during 3 songs. It reminds me of a saying: a top student has 2 pens. A poor student has a lot of stationery. I let that land. Are you playing the drums or showing off your wealth? Pei Fei Hong grabbed him before he could respond, led me to the recording studio. I picked up a Martin electric acoustic guitar worth more than my family's savings and recorded Nanshan Nan in 1 take. When I stepped out, Jia Yue was glowing. Pei Fei Hong looked like he'd discovered fire. Then, he asked if I had other original work. I did. Or rather, I would. A folk ballad called "Where Has the Time Gone?" A song that wouldn't exist for years. Here's the thing about claiming future songs as your own. I won't pretend it's clean. Someone would write this song someday, pour their heart into it, agonize over every lyric, and I was about to put my name on it. But that songwriter hadn't conceived of it yet. First come, first served. At least I knew where the songs came from. That was more than most plagiarists could say. I played the opening. Simple arpeggios. The band members relaxed. They thought this was weaker than Nanshan Nan. Then, the melody hummed in like fog over a lake, and they tensed back up. The old tree in front of the door sprouts new buds, and I thought of my parents. Not the young versions I'd been eating breakfast with, the other ones. Father's back giving out from construction work after the mine closed. Mother's hair turning gray before 50. The guilt of watching them age from 800 kilometers away, knowing I could have done more if I'd started sooner. My eyes filled. Not performance, not technique, just memory. The kind you can't fake because your body remembers it before your brain catches up. The song lasted 5 minutes. Less than a minute in, Jia Yue was crying, not sniffling, crying, both hands pressed over her mouth. Within 2 minutes, all 4 band members had wet eyes. Even An Mingxuan was blinking hard, jaw clenched, looking anywhere but at me. I finished, set the guitar down, walked out of the booth. Silence. Jia Yue wiped her face. Her voice was thick. She said the lyrics felt like walking step by step into old age. She had no idea how right she was. Then I made my move. I told Pei Fei Hong I had a third song, upbeat, strong rhythm, perfect for a band entering a national competition, 30,000 yuan, plus their help running a music streaming website I was planning to build. More songs if it worked, enough for an album. Pei Fei Hong didn't negotiate. He walked into the back room and came out with 3 thick stacks of cash, stuffed them into my arms like he was afraid I'd change my mind. 30,000 yuan, more than my parents earned in a year. In my hands because I'd played a song that didn't belong to me yet, in a room full of rich kids who'd never been told the truth about their own talent. Was it fair? No. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Because Du Feng was still promising to chop off my hands. Because Yu Yanhui still needed tuition. Because my parents were still young enough to save. And because the streaming website I'd just pitched was going to intercept millions of users before Baidu even knew they existed. The download counter was still climbing. The Blade team was still bleeding. And I was standing in a rehearsal studio, holding 30,000 yuan in cash, wiping my eyes, thinking about my mother's gray hair in a timeline that hadn't happened yet. Some weapons are loud, some are silent, and some make you cry while you're using them. The next morning, I woke up in Jia Yue's house, not a hotel, her actual duplex in the provincial capital. Hardwood stairs, living room the size of my parents' entire apartment. She was in the open kitchen making hot milk. I squinted against the light, head trying to secede from my body. "You're awake," she said. 11:30. I'd been unconscious for over 10 hours. The last thing I remembered was handing canned beer to strangers while she rode on my back through a screaming crowd. And before that, Samaranch's voice on the rear projection TV at the food stall. One word, Jing Cheng. The entire street detonating. July 13th, 2001. Beijing won the 2008 Olympics. I'd watched it with barbecue and beer, and people who didn't know they were building an empire with me. The backpack at my feet contained 120,000 yuan in cash, the first real money of my second life. Not a single cent from code. The breakdown, 30,000 from Pei Fei Hong for the 2 folk songs, 90,000 more from the band collectively because they wanted full songwriting credit on Young and Promising. Li Ronghao's song, catchy, rhythmic, the kind of melody that grabs your foot before your brain catches up. I'd written the lyrics out, taught them the accompaniment, sang it twice, watched Pei Fei Hong light up. The deal? They compete with it at the charming Ice Soul National Music Competition. Run my streaming website in return. Their money, their labor, my shares. But first, the band needed to stop looking like philosophy students who'd gotten lost on the way to a bar. I told Pei Fei Hong to cut his hair, all 4 of them, and Mingxuan resisted, said his long hair was part of his identity. I asked whose identity, his or every other drummer in China. Pei Fei Hong went first. I described the look, clean sides, volume on top, the kind of style William Chan would make famous in a few years. He walked back into the studio, and the other 3 stared at him like he'd been replaced by a better-looking twin. The bassist caved the next day, then the guitarist, and Mingxuan held out 48 hours. 4 rich kids with million yuan equipment and a song that wouldn't miss. All they had to do was not trip on stage. They didn't trip. The charming Ice Soul regional qualifier was held at a performing arts center in the provincial capital. I wasn't there. I was back in Yawan by then, working on the plug-in strategy. But Jia Yue called me that night, breathless. 27 out of 30, highest score of the entire show. The judges couldn't stop talking about the original song. One of them, a director from a Beijing record company, pulled Pei Fei Hong aside afterward and hinted that he should keep writing. Hinted in the way that industry people hint, which meant he was already running numbers. These judges thought they were discovering raw talent. They were rating a song that had already conquered the charts in a timeline they'd never see. 3 days later, An Mingxuan called me directly. First time he'd ever used my number. He wanted to invest, not in the band, in the music streaming website. 100,000 yuan, no questions asked. I asked why. He said his old man always told him the first sign of a real opportunity was when someone young moved with total certainty. He said I moved like I already knew the ending. He wasn't wrong. I just couldn't tell him that. 120,000 yuan total. I was 18 years old with more money than my parents would earn in 5 years. In my first life, I was eating instant noodles at this point. Jia Yue drove me back to Yawan the next afternoon. I bought a laptop first, an IBM T20, nearly 20,000 yuan, plus a modem for dial-up. No broadband in Yawan, but the internet was the internet, even at 56 kilobits. Back home, I told my parents the sanitized version, sold some songs to rich college kids. They believed it because the alternative was too bizarre to consider. Mother asked how much. I said enough. Father didn't ask. He just looked at the laptop box and then at me, and I saw the exact moment he decided to stop treating me like a child. 100,000 remaining, wrapped in a plastic bag, hidden under old textbooks. This was the foundation, not the fortune, the foundation. The real money was still bleeding out of the Blade team's collapsing network, waiting to land in my hands. But first, there was one more thing to do before summer ended: saying goodbye. University applications were due 3 days after I got back from the provincial capital. Yu Yanhui and I walked to school together, forms in hand. His was filled out in blue ink, slightly smudged. Beijing Information Technology Vocational College, Computer Science. I looked at him. He shrugged. Then he pulled out a wrinkled tourist map of Beijing. He'd actually bought one, and showed me the distance between his school and Beijing University of Technology. Less than 2 kilometers. I checked every school within a 5-kilometer radius, he said. This one was the closest to yours, and the score's low enough that even I can't miss it. I started to tell him he didn't have to pick a school based on proximity to mine. He cut me off. I know I can't compare to you. Not in studying, not in anything, really. He wasn't performing modesty. His voice was flat and serious, the way it gets when Yu Yanhui stops joking. But as long as you still care about me, I'll follow your lead. Following you is the right move. In my first life, this kid ran away from home, vanished into the sprawl of Chinese cities, and called me once a year with 6 words: brother, Happy New Year. Click. For over a decade. In this life, he was choosing Beijing, choosing me, of his own free will. I didn't say anything profound. Just nodded and told him Beijing had a lot of opportunities, and we'd make the most of them. But my throat was tight, and I think he noticed. At the school gate, I heard someone call my name, Zhao Yueying. Yu Yanhui glanced between us, grinned, and said he'd head in first, subtle as a freight train. She walked up, ponytail swinging, no makeup, devastating. She asked if I was really applying to Beijing University of Technology. You think I'm joking? No. A hesitation. I just don't want you to regret it. What if you don't pass? I pulled my application form from my pocket and handed it to her. She opened it. Her eyes widened. First choice, Beijing University of Technology. Only choice. No backup, no safety net. In my first life, I'd picked a second-tier provincial school because I couldn't afford the risk. I'd spent 4 years watching from 800 kilometers away while she boarded planes to a life I couldn't touch. Not this time. What if you don't get in? She asked again. I retake next year and apply again. Same school. Her expression shifted, something between admiration and exasperation. She told me to at least write Beijing University of Science and Technology as a backup. Even she'd done that, and her estimated score was 657. I stuffed the form back in my pocket. I won't fill it in. She looked at me, face flushed, eyes clear. I filled it in, she said quietly. I'm not absolutely sure I'll get into Beijing University of Technology either. I smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't been able to produce in my first life, warm and a little reckless. You can do it. She held my gaze for a beat longer than she needed to. Then we walked inside together and submitted our forms. That evening, the farewell dinner. The class monitor had booked a private room at a mid-range restaurant, 4 tables, big enough for everyone. In the science stream, boys outnumbered girls 3-1, so we sat separately. Someone threw 2 packs of Red General cigarettes on each boy's table. In 2001, key high school students were disciplined enough that almost nobody smoked. But this was the farewell dinner. Rules were already dissolving. A few boys who knew how to smoke lit up first. Then, as the beer flowed, almost every boy had one hanging from his lip, not inhaling, just holding it there, playing at being men. The smoke thickened until the ceiling disappeared. The girls didn't complain. They understood. At first, the room was loud. Toasts, jokes. The class monitor tried to give a speech and got shouted down by 3 boys demanding he drink instead. Bottles clinked. Laughter bounced off the walls. It felt like any party. Then it changed. A boy, whose name I couldn't recall, quiet kid, always sat near the window, choked on smoke, coughed, and started crying, not quietly. He grabbed the edge of the table and sobbed, shoulders heaving. The kind of crying that isn't about sadness. It's about the sudden understanding that something is over, and no amount of beer or smoke or noise can put it back. The room cracked open. Within seconds, every table had someone crying. Boys hugging boys. Boys shouting through tears. Half curse, half blessing. 2 boys punching each other's arms, and then pulling each other into an embrace so fierce they nearly knocked over a table. I watched this from my seat, feeling what I hadn't expected to feel. I'd lived through this dinner once. In my first life, I was the second boy to cry. I thought being reborn would make me immune, that I'd sit here with my 38-year-old composure and observe the spectacle with amused detachment. Watch the children grieve while I, the adult who'd already said all his goodbyes, sipped beer and waited for the check. That's not what happened. What happened was this. I looked at these boys, red-faced, snotty, clinging to each other in a smoky room, and I knew something they didn't. I knew which ones I'd never see again. I knew which friendships would survive and which would evaporate the moment distance got between them. I knew the class monitor would gain 30 kilograms and sell insurance. I knew the quiet kid by the window would move to Shenzhen and lose touch with everyone. Foreknowledge doesn't immunize you against grief. It concentrates it. Every farewell I'd already lived through hit me at once. 20 years of them, compressed into a single moment in a rented private room. My eyes burned. I was not going to cry in front of 30 people. I grabbed a red General from the table, lit it, drew the smoke in deep, and held it 2-3 seconds, then let it curl out through my nose and mouth simultaneously. The way a pack-a-day smoker does it. The way I'd done it for 15 years in my first life. Across the room, through the haze, I saw her, Zhao Yueying, sitting with the girls, a glass of soda untouched in front of her, eyes red, one step from crying. She was watching me, not the way the other girls watched the boys' table, with amused pity, the way you'd watch puppies bumping into furniture. She was watching me specifically, and when she saw me smoke, draw, hold, release, with the effortless rhythm of a man who'd been doing it for decades, something shifted in her expression, surprise, then something deeper than surprise, because 18-year-old boys don't smoke like that. Their fathers smoke like that. Our eyes locked through the smoke. The room was chaos. Boys singing, boys crying. Someone had started a chant, but between us, it was silent. The kind of silence that exists inside noise. I mouthed 3 words. I'm here for you. No sound, just lips moving. 3 syllables she could read across a room. She turned away. Her shoulders shook once, twice. Then she was crying, face in her hands, and the girl beside her put an arm around her. I put the cigarette down. My hand was steady. My chest was not. I didn't plan to say it. There was no strategy behind it, no manipulation. In that moment, in the smoke, in the grief, in the strange vertigo of saying goodbye to a life I was living for the second time, it just came out. A promise made before my brain could veto it. And the thing about promises made like that, they're the ones you have to keep. The vice class monitor found me outside by the stairwell, looking stressed. The dinner bill had overrun the budget, over 400 yen on beer alone. The 50 yen everyone had chipped in wasn't going to cover karaoke. I pulled 900 yen from my pocket and pressed it into her hand. Take it, don't make a fuss. Order plenty at karaoke, drinks, snacks, the works. Leave enough so everyone can take taxis home after. She refused. I insisted. She tried again. I told her to look at the room. 30 drunk teenagers, none of them in any condition to discuss splitting costs. Just make it a good night. Don't tell anyone where the money came from. She took it. At karaoke, the madness continued. The boys seized both microphones and sang later on an infinite loop. The same song, over and over. Different voices. Terrible voices. The kind that make dogs howl. But every boy who took the mic was in tears by the second chorus. Later, I finally learned how to love, but you had already gone far away and disappeared into the sea of people. They sang it 4 times, 5 times. Someone kept hitting replay, and I couldn't find the remote to stop them. I sat in a corner, drinking a beer, watching boys who would scatter across China within a month, singing the same words about loss, as if the song could stop time. It couldn't. After the 6th replay, I went outside and bought a pack of Jinjiang cigarettes, smoked one on the curb, came back to find the girls had finally wrestled control of the microphone. Meteor shower. Then, courage. And someone shouted Zhao Yueying's name. She sang, soft voice, clear pitch, nothing flashy. 80 points, maybe 85. The drunk boys erupted into applause like she'd performed at the Grammys. I sat up straight, listening. In my first life, I was unconscious by the time we reached karaoke. I'd never heard her sing. 20 years of carrying this woman in my memory, and I'd missed something this simple. The night wound down around 2. The vice class monitor herded everyone into taxis, quietly efficient, using the last of the 900 yen. Nobody asked where the money came from. Nobody needed to, but someone found out anyway. On the walkout, Zhao Yueying stopped the vice class monitor and asked her directly, "What did Zhou Hao say to you?" The vice monitor hesitated, glanced around, then whispered the truth. 900 yen. Make sure everyone has a good time. Don't tell anyone. Zhao Yueying's face went still. The vice class monitor added, "I was shocked when I got it. A whole semester of high school tuition is less than 900 yen. The night ended. I took a taxi home. The city was dark, the streets empty, the Olympic banners still hanging from every lamppost. I leaned my head against the window and thought about what I'd said to her. 3 words I couldn't take back. 3 words I'd have to prove. In my pocket, the application form was already submitted. Beijing University of Technology. First and only choice. Same city, same campus district, less than 2 kilometers from Yuyanhui. The summer was almost over. The real money was coming. The real dangers too. But in that taxi, at 2 in the morning, with cigarette smoke still in my clothes and the ghost of a farewell song still ringing in my ears, I wasn't thinking about money or danger. I was thinking about the way she turned away, the shake in her shoulders, the crack in the glass that started on score estimation day and had just spread across the entire surface. Some promises are made with confidence. Others are made with trembling hands and a prayer. I knew which kind mine was. Around 11, a few boys stumbled toward the bathroom. I was in the corner, nursing a beer, letting the karaoke noise wash over me. Then, Ding Jinghao came sprinting back, face white, voice cracking. The class monitor got jumped. All boys, now. 20 drunk teenagers lurched to their feet and charged down the hallway. No plan, no weapons, just fury and alcohol. I didn't follow immediately. I grabbed a beer bottle off the table, weighed it in my hand, and slung it over my shoulder. Here's the thing nobody in that hallway knew. In my first life, this fight happened too. I was passed out on a karaoke couch while it went down. Woke up the next day to hear a classmate had been stabbed in the stomach. Spent half a month in the hospital. The scar was still there at our 10-year reunion. I remembered the knife, a butterfly knife. In my first life, nobody saw it coming. This time, I came armed. The scene at the bathroom was ugly. 5 thugs had cornered the class monitor and 2 others against the tile wall. Our boys piled in, shouting. The thugs realized they were outnumbered, but the stocky one dropped his mop, reached behind his back, and pulled out a butterfly knife, flipped it open. The blade caught the fluorescent light. He told everyone to back up, or someone was getting stabbed. My drunk classmates surged forward anyway. I moved, not from the front, from the side. While every eye tracked the knife, I circled behind him. 1 step, 2. The bottle came down on the back of his skull with a sound like a melon splitting. Glass and beer exploded everywhere. His knees buckled. I grabbed his wrist, the one holding the knife, and twisted, hard. Something snapped. The butterfly knife clattered across wet tile. "I've had my eye on you for a long time," I said. I picked up the knife, looked at the other 4 thugs. None of them had weapons, just fists and fading courage. I turned to my classmates, 20-something boys with bloodshot eyes and clenched jaws, and said the only thing that mattered. Beat them. Break the arms and legs of anyone who fights back. They didn't need to be told twice. What happened next was controlled chaos. 4 or 5 boys per thug, local punks in their early 20s who'd picked a fight with the wrong room. They went down fast, but I wasn't done. These thugs cared more about reputation than pain. Break their nose, and they'd brag about it tomorrow. What they couldn't survive was humiliation. Strip them, I said. Shirts, pants, everything. Summer clothes come off easy. The boys swarmed. T-shirts ripped like paper. Jeans peeled down kicking legs. Within a minute, 5 grown men were squatting in their underwear on a hallway floor, covered in beer and broken glass, wailing like children. The knife wielder, the one with blood streaming down his face and a wrist he couldn't move, clutched his groin with his good hand and begged, please, not the underwear. Ding Jinghao, eyes still blazing, reached for the waistband. The thug actually sobbed. I let it play out for 3 seconds. Then, I waved Ding Jinghao off. The underwear stayed. The reputation didn't. Through all of this, from the doorway of the karaoke room, Zhao Yueying watched. Not the way the other girls watched, huddled, terrified, clutching each other's arms. The vice class monitor's voice had been trembling when she asked what to do, but Zhao Yueying's face was calm, almost amused. She watched me hold the butterfly knife, watched me direct the boys, watched the thugs reduced to whimpering shapes on the floor. She wasn't frightened. She trusted the outcome before it arrived. The KTV manager showed up with security guards, shouting about calling the police. Funny, he hadn't appeared when thugs were beating the class monitor. One of the thugs called him Brother Tiger through his tears. Connected. The joint defense team arrived minutes later, a dozen auxiliary police, led by a deputy captain named Chen Yang. The KTV manager rushed to him, spinning the story. Drunk students causing trouble. Then, Zhao Yueying stepped forward. She walked right up to Chen Yang, spine straight, ponytail swinging, and said 4 words that rearranged the room. Uncle Chen, these are my classmates. The KTV manager tried to interrupt her, called her little girl. Chen Yang turned on him so fast the man flinched. Shut up! Zhao Yueying's father was Zhao Liangjun, deputy director of the Municipal Bureau of Commerce. Chen Yang knew exactly whose daughter he was looking at, a man who could advance or bury his career with a single phone call. The room flipped. Chen Yang ordered the thugs arrested. I handed him the butterfly knife and pointed to the class monitor's face. Then, I inflated the class monitor's credentials, told Chen Yang he was potentially this year's exam champion, future Tsinghua material, pure fiction. But with the deputy director's daughter 3 feet away, nobody was questioning anything. The thugs were handcuffed in their underwear and dragged out. We took the beaten classmates to the hospital, minor injuries, bruises, a split lip. The thugs' families showed up, polite and terrified. After midnight, classmates left one by one. Ding Jinghao clapped me on the shoulder, said the bottle was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. The vice class monitor took the last taxi, but not before leaning out the window. Zhou Hao, I'm entrusting the school beauty to you. Get her home safe. Mission accepted, I said, and then silence. 2 lifetimes. This was the first time I had ever been alone with her. Not in a classroom, not at a crowded dinner, alone, after midnight, on an empty street. I asked where she lived. Close, she said. Less than 10 minutes walk. She glanced at me. Why don't you walk home with me? My heart rate, which had been steady through a knife fight, through smashing a bottle over a man's skull, through directing 20 boys in controlled violence, my heart rate spiked. Okay, I said. Too fast. Almost jumped. We started walking. I don't remember what we talked about. Something ordinary. Something that didn't matter. What mattered was the space between us. Less than a foot. Close enough that our arms almost brushed with every step. The streetlights were spaced far apart, and between them, we walked through pools of darkness where I could hear her breathing. 10 meters. We made it 10 meters. A car stopped beside us. Chen Yang, the Joint Defense Deputy Captain, climbed out, all smiles. Said he'd called Deputy Director Zhao. Said the director had asked him to bring Yue Ying home. Her face changed. The calm from the fight scene vanished. Pure irritation. She told Chen Yang to go home. He stammered. Then his phone rang. Director Zhao on the line. She took the phone, said, "Hello," listened, said, "I understand, Dad," in a voice that carried the specific grief of a daughter who knows her father is right but hates him for it. She hung up, turned to me. "I'm sorry, Zhou Hao." Hands in my pockets. Casual posture, casual voice. Nothing casual about anything happening inside my chest. "It's fine. Go home. Don't let your dad worry." She started toward the car, stopped, turned back. "Do you want to get your driver's license this summer?" "I'd like to," I said. "Let's sign up together. Yuhang Driving School has a class for recent graduates next week. I'll send you the details on QQ." She got in the car. The exhaust puffed. The taillights shrank to red dots and disappeared. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. Then I kicked a soda can so hard it sailed across the street and cracked against a wall. 2 lifetimes. 20 years of carrying her in my memory, and I got 10 meters. But she'd engineered the next meeting before the car door closed. The driving school wasn't a casual suggestion, it was a plan. She wasn't waiting for me to chase her. She was building the bridge herself, one plank at a time. I walked home alone. The streets were empty. The Olympic banners still hung from every lamppost. Somewhere behind me, a girl I'd loved across 2 timelines was being driven to safety by a man I wanted to strangle. 10 meters. I'd take it. 3 days later, Yu Yanhui and I boarded a 5 a.m. train to Qingzhou. 800,000 won, the Blade team's entire fortune, pooled from 2 partners, squeezed from their families, scraped together down to the last 10,000 yuan note. Jay Kun had messaged me on QQ. 800,000 was his limit. Take it or leave it. I took it. Not because it was fair, because it was fast. I'd asked for 1.2 million. Zi Kun couldn't reach it. His partner Wan Tai joined forces, and together they'd assembled every yuan they could touch. Speed mattered more than maximizing the price. The Stone Age game had maybe 6 months left. Every day I held the source code was a day it depreciated. The plan was clean. Meet at the Agricultural Bank of China, Qingzhou branch. Show the code, bank transfer. Hand over 3 CDs, 3 copies, because a scratched disc could void the deal. Yu Yanhui's job, stand near the entrance and watch for anything wrong. At the bank, I waited with the IBM T20 on my lap, the only person in a room full of retirees holding a laptop. Zekun spotted me immediately. Late 20s, nervous hands, the kind of energy that comes from watching 2 years of work get destroyed in 3 weeks. I gave them 5 minutes with the code. Zekun scrolled through it, his expression shifting from suspicion to resignation. My code was too advanced for him to fully read, which meant it was too advanced to fake. He nodded. We walked to the counter. Transfer form. Teller. 800,000 yuan moved from his card to mine. Receipt printed. Signatures exchanged. 3 CDs handed over. Done. No dramatic confrontation, no revenge speech, no moment where I looked the man who'd threatened to chop off my hands in the eye and delivered a devastating one-liner. That was Du Feng's fantasy, the thug who'd shouted threats into the void while his business crumbled. Du Feng wasn't even here. He'd quit weeks ago. The hunter had become the customer, and the customer didn't even know what I looked like until today. 800,000 won for 3 days of coding. Outside, Xie Kun and Wan Tai climbed into a taxi. I turned around. Yu Yanhui was squatting in front of a convenience store across the street, drinking a cola, trying to look casual, failing spectacularly. I waved him over. He tried to stand, couldn't. His legs were shaking, not from the squatting, but from watching 800,000 wen change hands through a glass door. I pulled him up and walked him back into the bank, took out a transfer form, wrote the amount, 80,000 won. He stared at it. That's not 50,000. 1-9 split, I said. He started to argue. I told him the role of the online troll army was going to be critical in everything we built next. That 50,000 was for the past. The extra 30 was for the future. He opened his mouth again, and I told him to shut up and sign. He signed. On the train home, he kept checking his bank balance every 3 minutes. Same number every time, 80,000 won, as if the money might evaporate. He told me later that the moment he decided to follow me for life wasn't the transfer. It was afterward, the way I smiled, calm, like closing an 800,000 wen deal was just another Tuesday. That's when he knew. Back in Yawan, I told my parents the deal had earned 180,000. The real number, 720,000 in my account, stayed buried. I told Yu Yanhui to tell his parents 20,000. Call it manipulative, call it protective. The truth is, I knew my parents. If I put 700,000 yuan on the kitchen table, my father would tell me to deposit it safely and never touch it. My mother would insist on using it for university tuition and nothing else. They would never quit their jobs. They would never take a risk. They would ride the iron mine all the way down to the layoff notice that was already being typed, and I would watch it happen for the second time. I couldn't let that happen, so I lied about the money, and I used it to build their exit. The phones came first. Nokia 8250s for me and my parents. A Motorola V998 for Yu Yanhui, the flip phone he'd been eyeing for weeks. Over 8,000 yuan total. My father played Snake on his new phone for 20 minutes before looking up and saying something that stopped me cold. He said when he first started working, his father could only reach him by telegram. He'd known even then that phones would become universal. 43 years old, surveyor at a mine about to lay him off, and the man had predicted the mobile revolution from first principles. I looked at him differently after that, not as the quiet father who deferred to my mother's worrying, as someone whose vision had been trapped by circumstance. I was about to blow the cage open. The domain names came next. I sat at the IBM T20 with the dial-up modem whining and registered the future of the Chinese internet for less than 100 yuan per name, Taobao, the domain Jack Ma wouldn't think of until 2003. Alipay, the payment platform that would process trillions. WeChat, the app that would replace phone calls for 1 billion people. Pinduoduo, Dubon, Renren, Jihu. Each name was worth nothing in 2001 and would be worth a negotiation with a billionaire in 10 years. First come, first served. Sorry, everyone. Then I went looking for a shop. My parents needed a business that would pull them out of the mine before the layoff hit. The answer had come to me the night I walked home after Zhao Yueying's car disappeared. A Tang Lion sign, still lit past midnight. The only clothing brand in a city starving for options. Not Tang Lion, Yichun, a franchise that didn't exist in Yawan yet, but would dominate mid-tier fashion for the next decade. No franchise fee. Total investment around 400,000, including renovation and stock. I found the location on the second day, a 120 square meter storefront on the main commercial street. The landlord wanted 100,000 a year. I negotiated him to 88,000, locked in a 5-year lease with no increases and a right to renew. Signed it with my own name. My parents had no idea. I was 18 years old. I had a signed lease, a laptop, a modem, 7 domain names worth billions in a decade, a best friend with 80,000 yuan and unshakable loyalty, a band winning competitions with my songs, 100,000 in investment from a real estate heir, and the silent promise of a girl who'd engineered our next meeting before her father's car pulled away. The summer wasn't over. Beijing was waiting, and the people who would try to destroy everything I'd built hadn't appeared yet. But the foundation was set, and foundations, once poured, don't crack easy. The week after I signed that lease, I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. Not because of anxiety, because there weren't enough hours. I had a franchise to launch, a music platform to build, a forum to deploy, a troll army to recruit, and a band that needed babysitting through a televised competition. All before the summer ended, and Beijing swallowed me whole. Let me walk you through it. An 18-year-old running 4 operations out of his parents' apartment with a dial-up modem and a laptop on the kitchen table. It sounds absurd, but I had 20 years of tech industry experience crammed into a teenage skull. I wasn't guessing. I was replaying. The franchise came first. The shop was locked in. $88,000 a year. 5 years. No increases. But a lease is just a piece of paper until you fill the space with product. I called Yichun's headquarters the same afternoon. Customer service walked me through the process. Fax your ID, lease agreement, and property certificate. Transfer 3,000 yuan as an inspection fee. They'd review and send someone within 48 hours. I went back to the print shop near number 1 middle school, the same one where I'd printed the lease contract, organized the paperwork, fed it through the fax machine page by page, then walked next door to the agricultural bank and wired the 3,000. By the time I got home, the sun was setting, and my mother was asking why I smelled like printer toner. 48 hours later, a woman named Sheng Qian called. Mid-20s, efficient, no small talk. She was an inspector from Yichun's headquarters, already in a neighboring province, and she'd arrive at Yawan bus station by noon the next day. I picked her up, took her to the best hotel in town for lunch, and answered every question she had. Why Yichun? Branded clothing for young consumers, design plus low asset model, positioned to dominate mid-tier fashion. Market operations? I talked celebrity endorsements, Cecilia Chung, Louis Koo, then mentioned their IT information systems. That's where her eyebrows went up. In 2001, franchise applicants in small cities didn't talk about information systems, but I'd spent my first life watching the retail revolution from the tech side. Inventory management software would separate stores that scaled from stores that drowned. After lunch, I showed her the shop. Battelle and his wool sweaters were gone. The space was raw and enormous, 175 square meters on the most central block of Yaowen's commercial street. She walked the floor, nodded quietly. That evening, she said the assessment was complete. Standard review, 7 working days. But when I handed her a red envelope at the guest house door, 1,000 yuan, half a month's salary, and said, "Sister Sheng, I hope the results come out soon," she didn't chase me down to return it. 7 working days. I didn't have 7 working days to waste. But the wheels were turning, and I had 3 other fronts to manage. Front 2, NetFrog Music. And Mingshuan called from the provincial capital. He'd found an office, 80 square meters in his father's commercial building, 2,000 a month. I told him to lock it in. The Dream Era members would cover rent as part of our deal. I provided songs and strategy. They provided capital. And Mingshuan posted job ads at the talent market. Programmers, server technicians, graphic designers. I needed at least 3 engineers because NetFrog wasn't going to look like every other ugly, rigid website in 2001. It was going to look like 2010. I'd already bought 2 servers on my last trip, hosted them at a bandwidth company, and pointed one at the forum I was about to launch. Which brings me to front 3, Jihu. The domain name I'd registered for less than 100 yuan was now a live forum. Bare bones, ugly, running on 5,000 yuan worth of purchased code that I'd modified over 2 late nights. It looked terrible. It functioned. That was enough. I gave Yu Yanhui super administrator privileges and 50,000 yuan in cash. His mission? Build a professional online troll army. Where to recruit, how much to pay per post, how to organize shifts and talking points. I didn't specify. I gave him the objective and the budget and told him one thing: speed. Yu Yanhui bought a laptop for 10,000 yuan, set up at his parents' kitchen table, and threw himself into it. He didn't ask why we needed a troll army. He'd watched me turn 3 days of coding into 800,000 yuan. If I said we needed 100 people posting on forums across the Chinese internet, he believed me. The troll army wasn't random chaos. It was infrastructure. When NetFrog launched, I needed the ability to seed discussions, manufacture buzz, flood comment sections across every major forum in the country. Community first, product second. A strategy that wouldn't become mainstream for 5 years, but I was building it now. Front 4, Dream Era. Pei Fei Hong and the band had cleared their preliminary round at Hedong University Gymnasium. Young and promising, landed clean. The crowd loved it, and the competition footage was being edited for provincial television broadcast. A Beijing record company had already reached out. I told Pei Fei Hong to refuse. He didn't understand why. Record companies meant studios, distribution, real albums in real stores. I told him to be patient. moment. When NetFrog launched, Dream Era would be the first act on the platform. Their fame would drive traffic. The traffic would build the platform. We'd record the singles ourselves. Perfect production. No label taking a cut. No contract signing away their rights. He agreed. They all did. After watching me rewrite their image and hand them a song that won over a live audience in 90 seconds, none of them questioned my judgment anymore. 4 fronts. Franchise, music platform, forum, band, 100,000 won shop lease, an 80 square meter office being furnished, 50,000 won seating a digital army, competition footage heading to broadcast. My parents thought I was spending my summer playing computer games and getting ready for college. My mother kept leaving plates of cut watermelon on my desk. My father asked once if the laptop was hurting my eyes. I was 18 years old, operating on 4 hours of sleep, and the only person who knew the full picture was me. Not Yu Yanhui, not An Mingxuan, not Pei Fei Hong. Each of them saw their piece. I saw the board. The foundation was setting, and somewhere across town, Zhao Yueying's QQ message was still sitting in my inbox, unanswered. Driving school registration, this week, 2:30. I hadn't forgotten, I just hadn't had time to breathe. The next morning, I finally opened Zhao Yueying's QQ message. Yuhang driving school, 2:30. Registration, 3 days unanswered. I typed back, I'll be there. Her reply came in under a minute. She'd been waiting. Zhao Yue dropped me off in the Audi. Zhao Yueying was already there, standing near the registration office. Simple ponytail, no makeup, a floral top that made her look like she'd walked out of a shampoo commercial. 30 or 40 people queued ahead of her. She'd come early. The moment I stepped out, she smiled. Then her eyes flicked to Zhao Yue behind the wheel, and the smile flickered, just for a half second, a blink of something I almost missed. I walked up grinning. You're here early. A few minutes early, she said, too casually. The line was long. Summer after the exam, every 18-year-old in Yawan wanted a license. I said something about the crowd. She said something about sunscreen, and I told her a beauty who could topple kingdoms didn't need to worry about a little tan. She blushed. The tips of her ears went pink. She changed the subject immediately. Asked about Yu Yanhui, whether he was signing up too. I smacked my forehead. I forgot about him. I'm the worst friend alive. She gave me a look, half scolding, half amused. Prioritizing romance over friendship? My face went hot. I called Yu Yanhui twice. No answer either time. I sent a text with the address and his options. While I waited, Zhao Yueying said, with the faintest edge of reproach, I left you my number on QQ. You bought a phone and didn't even tell me? I forgot. Just got it. Give it here. She took my phone, dialed her own number, saved it, handed it back with both contacts synced. Efficient. Structural. Zhao Yueying didn't do anything accidentally. Every move was a quiet decision to stay connected. That was when the guy with the 4-6 part showed up. He'd been ahead of us in line, glancing back at Zhao Yueying with the kind of sideways stare that thinks it's subtle but isn't. Short, stocky, hair slicked into a greasy part that looked like a dog had licked it into place. He walked straight at me, threw his arm around my neck like we were childhood brothers, and called me Wang Hao. My name is not Wang Hao. He looked vaguely familiar. The family compound, a face you'd seen 100 times without registering. But he'd gotten my name wrong, which meant he barely knew me either. He was using me as a bridge. His eyes kept drifting to the girl beside me. I didn't respond. He tried harder. Said he, Feng Xingan, had always considered me a brother. Feng Xingan. The name landed like a dropped coin. I remembered. The famous second-generation ancestor of Yawan Iron Mine. Father was Feng Ze, mine manager for nearly a decade, rumored to have embezzled anywhere from 10 million to 100 million, but who slipped out clean when the mine dried up. Feng Xingan was his only son, spoiled, arrogant, the kind of kid who cheated at hide and seek because his father was in charge. Dropped out of high school. Father bought him a seat at number 5 middle school so he could graduate. Exam score under 200. In my first life, this guy was worth over 100 million by 2010. Not because he was smart, because his father bought him a dozen apartments in Beijing starting in 2001, and real estate went vertical. A trust fund clown who stumbled into generational wealth by accident. I knew exactly what he was doing. He'd spotted Zhao Yueying, decided he wanted her, and was trying to use me as a stepping stone. I smiled. You've mistaken me for someone else. My name is Zhou Hao, not Wang Hao. I don't know you. That landed like a slap. He couldn't explode, not in front of her. He tried to recover, turned to Zhao Yueying with a greasy smile, apologized on my behalf, told her I'd always been like this, serious, unreasonable. Her voice went cold, not the warmth she used with me, not even neutral, cold. Maybe learn someone's name before you pretend to know them, she said. It's the least you can do. His jaw clenched so hard, I could see the muscles in his neck. He said through his teeth that this wasn't over, that I should remember his name. I will, I said. As long as you remember mine, Joe, not Wang. He wanted to swing. I could see it in the way his fists balled at his sides, but he was half a head shorter than me, and violence would bury him in front of the girl he was trying to impress. So he swallowed it, stepped back into line, positioned himself directly behind me, making sure he'd end up in the same class, same car, same schedule. Zhao Yueying noticed. Her lip curled. Shameless, she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. When she registered, class 2, number 14, she did the math instantly. 16 people per car, I'd be 15. Feng Xing'an would be 16, trapped together for weeks. Then my phone buzzed. Yu Yanhui. Didn't hear the ring during my nap. Register me? ID number is... When the staff handed me my receipt, number 15, I said, "Can I add one more person?" and read out Yu Yanhui's ID. Class 2, number 16, Yu Yanhui. Behind me, Feng Xing'an exhaled through his nose like a bull hitting a wall. The 16th slot was gone, filled by my best friend's napping carcass. I collected Yu Yanhui's materials and walked out with Zhao Yueying. Outside, the sun was brutal. I asked if she wanted a ride. Zhao Yue was waiting. She raised an eyebrow. "Is that your sister?" Something in her face relaxed, a breath she'd been holding since she first saw the car. "No, my aunt's place is right across the street." She pointed to a compound less than 300 meters away. I said, "If anything comes up, call me." She paused. "Exam results come out in about a week. If you score over 620, I'll treat you to dinner. What if I don't? Then you treat me. Deal." She smiled. The real one, the one that reached her eyes, and walked across the street. In the car, Zhao Yue asked if she was my classmate. I said yes. Chen Wan sighed from the back seat that the girl was beautiful. I told Zhao Yue she was prettier and asked her to drive. The driving school promise, the one she'd made before getting in her father's car weeks ago, was fulfilled. She'd engineered the meeting. I'd shown up. We had each other's numbers now. "I'm here for you." That's what I'd mouthed across the farewell dinner. 3 words, no sound. And today, without planning it, I delivered on them. Not with a grand gesture, but by refusing to let a spoiled mine manager's son treat her like a prize to be won. Some promises pay off quietly. The person you made them to doesn't even know you're keeping them. 2 days later, Zhao Yue drove me to Heidong University for the semifinals. Dream Era was a different band now. Pei Fei Hong's hair was cropped clean, the William Chan look, volume on top, clean on the sides, and his face had emerged from behind the curtain looking like someone who belonged on a magazine cover. The stage positioning was rearranged, 3 members in position first, then Pei Fei Hong walking out alone, guitar slung over his shoulder, 1 spotlight, 1 focus. They performed Blue Lotus, warm, earnest, uplifting without being saccharine. When Pei Fei Hong hit the chorus, the gymnasium erupted. Girls screamed, judges sat up straight. The photographer An Mingxuan had hired caught every angle, 27 out of 30, highest score of the entire competition. The Beijing record company director pulled Pei Fei Hong aside and offered to sign them. I told him to refuse. A record deal meant studios, distribution, real albums in real stores, but it also meant a contract, and contracts meant someone else owned their rights. When NetFrog Music launched, Dream Era would be the first act on the platform. Their fame would drive traffic. The traffic would build the company. No label, no middleman, no cut. He agreed. They all did. After watching me rename their band, rewrite their image, and hand them songs that demolished every competitor in the province, none of them questioned my judgment. The competition footage would air on provincial television the following Saturday. The photographer's shots would hit 3 major portals within the week, backed by 10,000 yuan in online PR. Dream Era was about to become famous. My media empire was taking shape, and I was 18 years old. But while I was watching a band win a competition, something else was happening, something I didn't learn about until much later, pieced together from fragments, and one conversation I was never supposed to hear. That same evening, in the Feng family's apartment, Feng Xing'an was screaming, not calculated anger, the high-pitched, foot-stamping rage of a child who'd been told no. He went straight at his father, shrieking that Zhou Hao had humiliated him, that Zhou Hao's parents needed to be fired. Feng Zhe, the mine manager, the bureaucrat, the man who'd sat in the same chair for a decade, waved his son off at first. Children's squabbles, not worth his time. He couldn't use his position to discipline some teenager over a driving school spat. But then, Feng Xing'an said the girl's name, Zhao Yueying, and her father's name, Zhao Liangjun, deputy director of the Municipal Bureau of Commerce. Feng Zhe's posture changed. I learned this later. Feng Zhe had no real connections in Yawan's government. His power was institutional, not political. Zhao Liangjun was in his early 40s, already 3rd in command at Commerce, on a trajectory that pointed straight at vice mayor. A marriage alliance with his daughter would give the Feng family something they'd never had, a foothold in city politics. Suddenly, Feng Xinghan's obsession wasn't embarrassing, it was useful. Feng Xinghan told his father she'd applied to Beijing University of Technology, and then, for the first time in his life, he said he wanted to go to university in Beijing, near her. His parents nearly fell out of their chairs. The dropout, the 200-point exam score, the boy who'd refused every attempt to send him to college, wanted to go to Beijing for a girl. Feng Zhe offered a top-of-the-line Toyota Crown and an apartment near the university. Nie Shui promised unlimited pocket money. The bribe was shameless and instant, and Feng Xinghan took it without hesitating. But he had one condition. Zhou Hao had to pay. Firing state employees without cause was impossible. Nie Shui explained this calmly, the way someone explains a household chore. You couldn't just terminate iron rice bowl workers. The entire mine workforce would revolt. But layoffs? Layoffs were different. Yaoan Iron Mine was already planning 2 rounds of cuts this year and another early next year. Every non-leadership employee was vulnerable, moving 2 names from one list to an earlier list. That was invisible, routine. No one would question it. Nie Shui was vice chairman of the Mine Workers Association. She controlled the layoff spreadsheets directly. "Then I'll make the arrangements," she said. 5 words, no emotion, the same tone you'd use to confirm a dinner reservation. Feng Xinghan's rage dissolved into a smug grin. He was already imagining driving school, watching my face when I found out my parents had lost their jobs because I'd embarrassed him. And me? I was 200 kilometers away, watching Pei Feihong bow to a cheering crowd, calculating PR budgets in my head. I didn't know about any of it. That's the part that still keeps me up at night. Not that they plotted against my parents, but that I didn't even consider it. I was running 4 businesses, managing a band, exchanging phone numbers with the girl I'd loved for 20 years. So busy building the future that I forgot the most basic rule of small-town China. The mine manager's family doesn't forget a slight. Nie Shui opened a spreadsheet that evening. 2 names, Zhou Jingsheng, Chu Die, moved from the 3rd round list to the 1st. My parents were scheduled to lose their jobs by the end of the month, and the only person who could have seen it coming was too busy celebrating to look. The score inquiry hotline opened at 6 in the evening. My mother had been checking the clock since 4. Every 10 minutes she'd glance at it, then at me, then back. My father sat pretending to read the Yaoan Evening News, but he hadn't turned a page in 40 minutes. I dialed at 601, speakerphone. The home phone sat on the dining table between us, like a device with a timer. The automated voice was flat, mechanical, the same tone they used for train schedules and weather forecasts. It asked for my admission ticket number. I punched it in. My mother's knuckles had gone white in her lap. Chinese, 119 points. A small frown from both of them, low side. My mother scribbled on the back of an envelope. Mathematics, 138 points. 257, she whispered. Science combined, 235 points. 492, her voice cracked. She looked at my father. He looked at the phone. 492 was exactly what I'd scored across those 3 subjects in my first life. Identical, down to the point. The exams where 20 years of corporate experience gave me 0 advantage. Everything rode on one subject. The room went silent. My mother's pen hovered. My father leaned forward, both hands on his knees. I could hear the refrigerator humming and the neighbor's television through the wall. English, 145 points. Silence. Then my father jumped to his feet. I've seen my father angry, tired, resigned. I've seen him swallow insults from my mother's family with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But I had never, not in 18 years the first time, not in 18 years the second, seen him tremble. His hands were shaking, not dramatically. A fine, involuntary vibration that started in his fingers and moved up through his wrists. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His eyes were wet. 145? His voice came out hoarse. That high? My mother burst into tears. Not quiet tears, the kind that come with sound. 637. My son scored 637. She said it like she needed to hear it from her own mouth to believe it. Her hand wouldn't stop shaking, and the numbers on the envelope were illegible. 637. In my first life, I scored 530, 20 points below first-tier cutoff. That 20-point gap became a wall. Second-tier university, senior engineer ceiling, 14 years in Beijing without owning an apartment, 20 points, 1 afternoon, an entire life defined by a number I couldn't change. Now the gap was gone, replaced by a 100-point surplus, so large it was almost obscene, and every single point of difference came from English. The exam I'd finished in 80 minutes. The exam I'd walked out of while the invigilator's mouth hung open, 145. I told everyone I'd score above 130. They'd laughed. Classmates, relatives, everyone who remembered me as the worst English student in Yaoan number 1. 15 points past my own bold claim. not just proof, a statement. My father grabbed my shoulders, mine workers' hands, rough palms, fingers that had held surveying equipment for 20 years. He squeezed once and didn't let go. Son, he said, nothing else. That was the moment my armor cracked. Not the sardonic distance, not the calculations running behind teenage eyes, just my father's hands on my shoulders, shaking, and a single word that carried everything he'd never been able to say. I told you my English would be exceptional, I said, and smiled, a real one. He laughed, mostly relief, mostly pride, the sound of a man discovering his son had outrun a future he didn't even know was chasing them. My mother was already on the phone, my uncle first, then grandparents, then friends from the mine compound. Each call opened the same way. Haozi got 637. By the 5th call, she'd added embellishments. By the 7th, my English score had its own paragraph. While she burned through the phone balance, I checked my own phone. A text from Zhao Yueying. Have you checked your scores yet? 637. You owe me dinner. Her reply came fast. Really? That's great. Tomorrow night? Can't. Family thing. Another day then. I asked her score. 657. 20 points above mine. She'd always been smarter. What I hadn't known until this exact moment was where she was going. Beijing Institute of Technology is all set for you, I typed. If you agree to be assigned to another major, Beijing Institute of Technology works for you too. Beijing Institute of Technology. My target was Beijing University of Technology. Different school, same city, less than an hour apart by bus. In my first life, I'd gone to a second-tier school in another province and never saw her again until a class reunion a decade later, when she was already married to someone who didn't deserve her. This time, we'd be in the same city, 2 universities separated by a few subway stops, and whatever excuse we invented to see each other. I hope so, I typed. We'd still be neighbors. A pause. Then, remember driving school theory class tomorrow. Don't be late. That was Zhao Yueying. She didn't say, I'd like that. She said, don't be late. And the warmth underneath those 3 words was louder than anything she could have spelled out. See you tomorrow. My father caught me grinning at my phone. Who are you texting? What's so funny? My parents exchanged a glance, the kind married couples share when they've already had the conversation without speaking. The next morning, my mother turned the phone into a weapon. She started at 8. Every relative, every friend, every former neighbor. My uncle, the one on her side, the tax bureau one, the one who'd spent years telling my father he lacked ambition, picked up on the 3rd ring. I heard his voice through the receiver, and I heard the exact moment it went quiet. 637. His own children hadn't scored that high. The decades of pointed remarks about my father's salary, the way he spoke to my father at dinners, like a boss addressing a janitor, none of it had anywhere to land now. What do you say to the father of a kid who just punched through first-tier cutoff by 100 points? He said congratulations. My mother thanked him graciously. She was already dialing the next number before the receiver was fully down. My aunt, the one with the clothing store, the one who tracked every yuan my parents spent, lasted even less time. My mother delivered the number with surgical precision. 637. English. 145. Beijing University of Technology. A tight little congratulations that sounded like it hurt coming out. By 10 in the morning, every person in my mother's contact list knew my score. She'd been a quiet woman my entire life, the kind who deferred to louder voices, who let my uncle's lectures wash over her. But today, she was relentless. She called everyone. She told them everything, and she enjoyed every second of it. My father sat at the kitchen table drinking tea, listening to her dial number after number. He didn't say a word. The number said everything he'd never been able to. 637. The 20 points that destroyed my first life were gone. In their place, a 100-point surplus, a path to Beijing, a girl heading to the same city, and a mother who'd finally found her voice. The Yawan Hotel's private room, 666, was the largest on the 2nd floor. By 6 o'clock, 8 cold dishes sat on a huge round table, flanked by 2 bottles of mu tai, placed symmetrically like sentries. The seafood alone cost more than 2,000 yuan. The waiter who took the order blinked twice and asked me to confirm. I confirmed. My father stood at the head of the table in his best shirt, the one he only wore to weddings. My mother had put on earrings. Remember what I said, I told them before anyone arrived. Only talk about my exam score. Don't contradict anything I say. Whatever I claim, you nod. They exchange the look married couples share when they've decided their child has lost his mind, but they'll go along with it anyway. My grandparents arrived first, beaming, followed by my uncle and his family. Then, my aunt arrived with her husband and daughter. She greeted my mother, skipped my father entirely, and went straight to the grandparents. I watched her scan the table, the mautai, the cold dishes, the size of the room. Her eyebrows drew together like someone doing math she didn't enjoy. Last came the eldest uncle and his wife, the tax bureau one. the one who'd spent 20 years speaking to my father the way a department head addresses an intern. He walked in, saw the mutai, and his expression cycled through surprise, suspicion, and something close to pain. He turned to my father with a lecturing tone and said the meal was too extravagant. One dinner that cost as much as a semester's tuition. Was this really necessary? Uncle, I said, stepping in before my father could shrink. Dad said tonight isn't about me. It's about getting the whole family together. We haven't eaten like this since cousin Yuan Yuan started college. That landed. The uncle nodded slowly, mollified, but already calculating. The wine flowed. Then, right on schedule, the uncle shifted to his favorite subject. He asked about the mine. Were there layoffs? How many batches? His voice dripped with concern, the way a scalpel drips with iodine. He launched into a speech about how the whole family worried about them constantly. The mine was failing. Tuition was expensive. He could help in an emergency, he said, but not in poverty, as if poverty were a disease my father had chosen to catch. I watched my father's face, the same expression he'd worn at family dinners for 20 years. Polite, shrinking, accepting the lecture because the uncle was the eldest, and in this family, eldest meant loudest. Not tonight. Uncle is right, I said. My parents have been thinking about it, the mine is failing, and they've decided to quit and start their own business. Both my parents' heads snapped toward me. Under the table, I found my father's knee with my right hand and my mother's with my left. I pressed down gently. Stay quiet. Trust me. My parents want to open a clothing store. My aunt's face fell so fast it nearly hit the table. She launched into a speech about how the clothing business wasn't for amateurs. Her children's store, the rent, the utilities, the inventory, risk. She wasn't afraid of competition, she said, but she wanted to protect my parents from making a mistake. She was afraid of competition. That's all it was. She made $30,000 to $40,000 a year selling children's clothes out of a cramped shop on a dead-end street. And the thought of my parents entering her industry sent her into a territorial spiral she couldn't hide. Don't worry, Auntie. My parents aren't making children's clothes. No conflict with you at all. Relief. Then she realized she'd overreacted and tried to cover it. The uncle leaned forward. He understood the money question. 2 bottles of mutai. This room, tuition, plus starting a business. Where was the money coming from? My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Last year, I said, a classmate's father found out a steel mill needed ore. My dad helped arrange a shipment. Howsy, you can't just say things like that. My father shot to his feet, genuinely panicked. He couldn't arrange ore shipments. Every ton needed the mine manager's approval. I just credited him with something impossible, and his horror was completely real. But that horror was exactly what made it convincing. Everyone at the table watched his red face and saw a man caught in an accidental confession, the kind of reaction you can't fake. I raised my hands like a scolded child. I was talking nonsense, Dad. Don't be angry. The innocent face, the teenage sheepishness. The father too flustered to deny anything convincingly. The table saw exactly what I needed them to see. A family that had quietly made real money and didn't want anyone to know. My aunt's offer to help evaporated. She'd mentioned her daughter's expenses in the same breath. Translation, don't even think about asking. Now that she thought my father had iron ore money, she had no leverage left. The dinner ended with my grandmother smiling and my grandfather patting my father's arm. Through the closing door, I heard the uncle's wife whisper about how Zhou Jingsheng had clearly struck it rich. Good. Let them think that. Let them stop looking at my father like he was a problem to be managed. After the relatives left, my parents turned on me like prosecutors. My father paced. He'd worked at the mine over 20 years. Who did I think I was, announcing a business they'd never discussed, inventing ore trading profits, putting him on stage in front of his in-laws? The mine is dying, I said. You know it. If you don't leave now, you'll be pushed out later with nothing. I've already invested over 100,000 Wayne. The franchise is approved. If you refuse now, that money is gone. Silence. My father sat down. My mother sat down. I explained the model. Yichun brand, computer inventory, monthly turnover of 200,000, net profit of 30,000 after rent, wages, and taxes. They listened with the bewildered concentration of 2 people who'd spent their lives measuring income in hundreds. When do we resign? My father asked. Tomorrow. The next morning, they walked into the Mine Workers Association office. Before they could open their mouths, the deputy director told them to sit down. He was sweating. He talked in circles about production reductions and increasing layoffs. Then he got to the point. The mine had decided to lay them both off. End of the month. My father stared at him. He'd come to resign voluntarily and the mine was firing him anyway? Dual-income couples were never laid off simultaneously. The mine always kept one spouse employed. Someone had moved both names onto the list, someone with authority. My mother nudged him. They'd come to resign. The coincidence was strange, but it changed nothing. Director, my father said, we're here to apply for voluntary layoffs. Since the mine agrees, there's nothing more to discuss. We need long leave starting tomorrow. The deputy director nearly leapt out of his chair. He'd expected a fight. Instead, 2 workers solved his hardest problem in 5 minutes. He stamped the leave slips and called their supervisors personally, making sure to tell everyone the couple had resigned voluntarily. They walked out as willing departures, celebrated by confused co-workers, talked about for days. They never learned the truth. Nie Shui had moved them to the layoff list 2 weeks earlier on Feng Xing'an's orders, a petty revenge for a driving school confrontation. The scheme was supposed to devastate them. Instead, it hit an empty chair. I didn't piece it together until later, when I connected the timing. The Feng family had loaded a weapon, aimed it at my parents, and pulled the trigger. By the time the bullet arrived, the target had walked away. Not because I'd seen the attack coming, because I was solving a completely different problem, getting my parents out of the mine to give them a future. The fact that it also neutralized a threat I didn't know existed. That was the kind of luck you earn by moving fast enough that your enemy's plans expire before they execute. 3 days before my parents left for Guangdong, I took a bus to the provincial capital to hire a tech director. Guo Kaiyu was 26, Tsinghua graduate, former Yahoo China developer. He'd returned to the province to start a navigation website, similar to How 123. Fewer than 2,000 daily visitors, and no revenue. He needed a job to fund his project. I needed a programmer who understood where the internet was heading. When he walked into the office, An Mingshuan had reserved for NetFrog Music. 80 square meters, 8 workstations, absurdly empty. His expression went through 3 stages: confidence, confusion, then a very specific look I'd seen before. The look of someone realizing the universe has made a clerical error. You don't look even 20, he said. I'm not. Haven't started university yet. He could have walked out. Instead, he asked to see my code. When he looked up, his voice had changed. He said my programming level was far above his own, like comparing a language student's proficiency test to a native speaker. I changed the subject to NetFrog's roadmap, cloud audio-visual services, personalized playlists stored server-side, a music portal that would become the dominant platform in online listening. To him, these were the future. To me, they were the past. We agreed on $3,500 a month. I told him he could keep developing his navigation website alongside our project, use the team when it didn't interfere, and if he ever wanted to sell, I'd get first refusal. He shook my hand like I'd offered him something nobody else had: patience. That evening, An Mingshuan introduced me to Lin Hui, 35 years old, Mercedes S500 with a driver who opened both rear doors. In Yawan, that car was a declaration. Lin Hui ran Wantai Real Estate, and in my first life, he'd become the legendary land king. More than 70% of the city's planned residential land would end up in his portfolio, respected in both the boardroom and the back alleys. The kind of man whose word settled disputes that the police couldn't. Call me Brother Hui, he said, not a request, an invitation into a circle I hadn't asked to enter. During the 3-hour drive back to Yawan, we talked. He told me about growing up in a fishing village, dropping out after junior high, working construction until An Mingshuan's father found him and invested in his future. He spoke with the candor of a self-made man who recognized the same quality in someone else. Before I got out at the mine compound, he said something I filed away where I keep useful weapons. Yawan is only this big. If anything happens, call your brother. In a city where the Feng family wielded institutional power, Lin Hui was the counterweight they didn't know existed. My parents and my aunt boarded a train to Guangdong 2 days later, soft sleeper tickets I'd bought without telling them. My father argued for 20 minutes about the cost. My mother cried. My aunt's attitude had transformed completely. A week ago, she'd blocked every avenue of assistance with preemptive speeches about her daughter's expenses. Now she knew I'd invested hundreds of thousands in my parents' franchise. The power dynamic had inverted overnight. At the station, she carried my mother's bag and smiled with a warmth that hadn't been there before. I watched the train pull away, my father's face in the window, still bewildered, my mother waving until I couldn't see her hand. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Jai Yue. She'd left a QQ message the day before. Little brother, I'm so bored in Shanghai. classic Jia Yue. But now the message was different. The semifinals of the Charming Ice Soul competition were in 3 days. The band needed me there. I texted back, "I'll be there." Yu Yanhui had sent his own report from Beijing. He'd contacted editors at every major portal site, gave away more than 10 MP3 players as gifts, built relationships the way I'd taught him, quietly, generously, one handshake at a time. The troll army was operational. Pei Feihong's photos were flooding provincial forums, college girls camping outside the rehearsal studio. The TV broadcast of the preliminary round had aired 4 times. Dream Era was becoming a name. I stood alone at the Yaoan train station, watching the platform empty. 18 years old, an exam score of 637, a franchise store in Guangdong training, a tech company with a Tsinghua-educated director, building a music platform nobody could see coming, a band whose fame was being manufactured by a one-man PR army who'd never been on a plane before last week, a forum running quietly, gathering users, domain names in my account worth more than everything else combined in a decade, an alliance with a man whose real estate empire would reshape the city, a best friend choosing a school 2 kilometers from mine, a girl heading to the same district, separated by a few subway stops and whatever courage we could find, and a family named Feng who'd fired a bullet into a chair I'd already vacated and didn't know it yet. In my first life, I was eating instant noodles at this point, alone in a dormitory, staring at a ceiling, wondering if 530 points would be enough. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. I spent 20 years learning that. The platform was empty. The summer heat pressed down on the concrete. I lit a cigarette, Jinjiang, the same brand I'd smoked on a curb outside a karaoke bar a lifetime ago, and watched the smoke curl into nothing. Somewhere in Shanghai, Jia Yue was safe. In Guangdong, my parents were learning to run a business they'd never imagined. In Beijing, Yu Yanhui was buying plane tickets with money he'd earned. In the provincial capital, Guo Kaiyu was writing code for a platform that would change how people listen to music. And in a house on the other side of town, Zhao Yueying was packing for a university where I'd be waiting. I was 18 years old, I had an empire, and I was just getting started.